This is open mic, and we have quite a complex setup today because we've had Mr. Peters, we've had Dr. King, we have Dr. Murray, and now we have our former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Cuthbert Phillips. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that I wanted to sort of marry what is going on today, the forensic work with the police work, and to draw on Mr. Phillips' extraordinary career as a police officer so he can give us an idea of what is going on. One of the questions I want to pose to Cuthbert today is, when I heard of this last incident and then the 2 or 3 incidents before that, we start to get concerned about St. Lucia, the direction we're going, the onerous responsibilities on the forensic lab as a result of what is going on. Cuthbert, take into account what has gone on in the last couple of days and what has happened in the last few weeks. What is really happening in St. Lucia? What can we do about it?
Michael, one of the things with what's going on in St. Lucia today, we have to find out, before we can solve it, what's causing it. What's the root cause? Why are our people so angry? Why there's so many murders? What's the cause of it? What's giving rise to it? And it's when we know these things, then we can put a plan in action as to how we are going to solve it. When I say that, you have to look at the situation. Is it love, hate? Is it drugs? Is it unemployment? What is it? And I don't think, to me, I'm not seeing that enough is being done to try to find out exactly what is causing these problems so that we can deal with the problems properly. A lot of young people are being arrested, but to me, I'm not seeing any figures as to what are the ages of these young people. Well, yes, that would be there. But the question is their background, their schooling, and since they have been in a life of crime, have they been working? Did they have a job? What kind of job they did? Or did they have a job and they were dissatisfied? All these things have to be put together to find out exactly what is causing our young people to be so angry. What is causing our people to take on to crime? Sometimes we have to ask ourselves the question, is the system lax so that they know I can commit that crime and I can get away with it? I remember a long time ago a guy will say, well, boy, I tell you, I'll put one licking on you and I'll go up there for 2 months for you. So he's satisfied that he's going to give you a beating, but he knows he has to pay the time. Things have changed now and everything. We don't know, because what is it that is causing our people to go into that direction?
Louis, when you do your tests, it may not become within your domain. You ever have the opportunity of talking to those people on a one-to-one when you're doing your tests with them?
When you say people,
the culprits.
No. We will stay away from that. Any information that we might need that would move our examinations forward, we work through the police.
Okay.
We might find out that, but we don't have any contact with any suspects or accused.
Mm-hmm. Going back to it, Michael, you'll say, well, where do I get that information? The best place to get the information is the prison. When the guys get into the prison, they're on remand and everything, you have persons, you have trained persons, go talk to them, sit there, they're there for hours, get to know them. Even sometimes you're looking at this thing now, cold cases, you see guys are coming out, they're ready to talk. Some of them are born again when they get it inside there. They're ready to give you the story, they're ready to, all this is vital.
Right.
You know, we have to get that kind of information. So based on that information, you will know how to operate.
I don't know if you've been following what happened there in Ireland.
Exactly.
After 30 years.
Yeah, 30, 40 years.
The information was left at the Boston College.
That's
and
right.
on one tape, they
That's
could
right.
bring in a big fish into this whole situation.
And this is the thing where I believe really and truly you must know what is happening. And the powers that be must do everything in their power so that we can have that information.
The other thing, if I may just come in, is that we find that the exposure of the forensic science and the work that is being done, and where we might be missing out, if there's not that full exposure, you find that there are many instances where suspects or accused persons, or maybe even through their lawyers, based on the forensic evidence that is coming forward, that they might change their plea, get sort of a benefit.
Yes.
And and then also it helps to speed up the process, because if you look at exoneration, if you have done, let's say you're looking at DNA, and this has completely exonerated a suspect or somebody who you're thinking of, then it means that you can move on. Yeah. It gives the police early warning so that they can now shift their attention to maybe some other person. So these are some of the benefits of getting your forensic service in proper order. It can actually act, if you want to say, like a deterrent.
Yeah, right.
But if you're not getting that benefit, accused will lie low until maybe to see what is really coming out. So they need to maximize the whole thing. And if we just step back to the crime scene, Dr. King we were discussing the crime scene, and this too is an area of concern, because crime scene work, as we were discussing earlier, it's not easy. I always say it's very difficult work. It's like a puzzle. You have to put together the pieces to know what went on. It is extremely difficult, and like I say, it becomes even worse if you have decomposed bodies or burned bodies. But things are advancing. It's just like in medicine. You have to go into specialist fields. I don't think, I'm subject to correction, but I think I'm correct. We have an arson investigator. Now, I've often heard the fire service talking about arson investigations. This is something you don't just, not anybody is an arson investigator. We need to get that sort of expertise. You need to talk about shooting. You have now a lot of gun crimes. So you have to have shooting reconstruction. These are different areas that we need to go in, because as we see, the crimes are getting more tricky. You find that they are more gruesome, and it's not necessarily the thing where you just find a body intact. So you have to be prepared for these changes, and you become prepared by that by looking at your staff, your human resource, and say we need people in different areas.
Going to the police side, Cuthbert, okay? I mean, what happened recently, that's just one case. It has happened before. What is it you would say that could be the cause? Maybe give me 3 or 4 causes why an individual would want to go that far to do those horrendous acts of murder. I mean, for instance, is it because somebody would hold, I mean, from you being a police officer, is it because people hold grudges, or is it something instantaneous? Is it, for instance, I know people talk of love triangles, gone sour, and that kind of.
Well, Michael, historically, if you look at it, a lot of these things give rise to some of these things. They even tell you sometimes you go to war over some kind of love triangle or whatever the case is. The other thing too is that you have to look at, see what is happening these days, especially in the world of drugs, in the world of crime. You know, even during the time of the mafia and all these kind of groups, the honor that this, and yet the new thing now is you disrespect. You in the group, you have taken away my money. You have to pay. I have to show you that you don't do these kind of things. Somebody has to pay. And then you must understand that even in the islands like St. Lucia, we are being influenced by a lot of the things which our young persons have seen being done overseas. Because it's open to you. You can see, you know, what is happening. Hey, it is this guy's coming, he has robbed this guy, then I have to take you out. This one, another thing we have common in this, you disrespect me. No respect. All these sort of things. And this is why I come back to the same point. I cannot give an answer to it, but what we have to find out, as I say, is to try to get those persons who will then map out as to what is the cause, Michael. Because I myself don't know, you don't know, and everything. But we can see trends. We can see what happens in some of the other countries, and we can say to ourselves, our young people sometimes copycats. You know?
But the drug situation in St. Lucia, that's a question for you. There are quite a few people actually selling and taking drugs themselves. What are the effects that the continuous drugs have on people? Does it make them more boisterous? Does it make them more adventurous? Make them more criminal-minded? What is it that it does? Because it's, to me, since I've that whole drug situation came on the last 35, 40 years, I've seen an increase in the kind of violence.
Yeah, Michael, that's not, you see, again, what I'm saying with all these things, sometimes it's easy for us to say that. Now, the marijuana smoker might tell you that when he smokes his grass, he's peaceful. He's looking for music, he's looking for love, he's singing back. Right. Somebody might tell you, no, it gets him aggressive, it gets him, you know, then Mr. Murray might be able to, but there are certain drugs where maybe that gets you aggressive, and because you have the uppers, as in the old days, and the downers. You see, the amphetamines, the barbs, one keeps you up, one keeps you down. And you know, young people sometimes take both, because you're going up, and then you want to go down. So what exactly happens? So these things are medical things, and you know, so we cannot say for sure unless, I think, scientifically we know what kind of drugs that these persons are taking and which kind of drugs are likely to cause you to behave in a certain manner.
The other thing we have to recognize too is that people are different. How a drug might affect somebody, it might not affect another person in that way. So you always have to bear that in mind. But if we want, just generally as we talking, if you want to look at two categories, you talk about marijuana, and you know it's sort of almost like a social thing. And as Cuthbert was saying, that the people will say, oh, it gets them peaceful. There is no harm in that. But if we want to isolate marijuana as something in a separate category, but if you start getting into the other category, which you start getting into cocaine, we don't have heroin here. But if you look at these heroin and LSD, these are hallucinogens. So you find that these drugs, you can't put them in the same bracket as, say, marijuana. That's a different category, and we have to be careful what the effects. I mean, these are things where a chap will go to the top of a building and tell you he can fly, and he will want to fly off the building. You see? So, but fortunately we are not at that stage, but we have to always be ready, because we don't know when it is coming. So these are, the other point too is that you have to realize too, and I think this is a key factor, drugs is a business. It's a big money-making thing. So you also have to factor that, and people want to protect their business. So this plays a major...
Because when you look at the guys like Gabo and what's the other fella at the time in that era who got killed?
Well, Gabo and others.
And yes, right. You know, I mean, at one stage you forget that he could just walk to town and nothing could happen to him. And look at how he was taken out. Again, maybe it was the money side or whatever has caused it, you know. But it is very worrying when you see what is happening today. What worries me is the violence.
Well, again, that's what I'm telling you now. You see, it's that aspect of it. And you see, the thing is that if we look at it, it's not only in St. Lucia. I mean, Michael, when you look at your television, sometimes it's really sad. Because all the news that you're seeing, everything centers on violence. Violence, the gun, the this, the this. And we have to ask ourselves the question, what effect these things are having on our children? You know? And everything is a shooting, a this. How many good things you see on television if you watch the news for the end of the day? And again, as I say, we have to take into consideration that we are being, and our people are really being influenced with a lot of the things that's happening in the world around them. It's not like before. Before it happens, you can already see it. And don't think that a lot of persons don't pattern their lives on what's happening, you know, as to what is happening, especially in that kind of activity.
And you see the unfortunate part, a small island like St. Lucia, when these things happen, it can affect our economy.
That's right.
Because, you know, away these things happen, I mean, look at in the States, you have all these murders at the schools and so forth, and life goes on. But one person gets killed here, it hits the headlines in the UK. It's for the last week, it's making the headlines all the time, you know? And people start to call and they say, you know, is St. Lucia safe? Can we come? It's okay. You all are dreadful, you know?
Right. Michael, one of the things I've said is that a lot of persons sometimes don't take it. You come in, you say, okay, so far how many murders we've had in St. Lucia? Maybe I don't know the figure.
For the year.
For the year?
I think it's 13.
That is we've had 13 murders. You have 13 murders in a population of 170,000. When you look at the number of murders as per population, That might put you way, way, way up.
Yeah.
Persons will say, no, look at Trinidad, look at this. But look at your population,
That's right.
because there are some countries or some states with population of over 1 million that don't have 5 murders in a year.
Yeah.
So you see, you have to take all these things into consideration and say, for a small island, why are we having so many murders? The other thing I want to point out sometimes on these shows, and even as myself as a retired commissioner, because fellas will say, Phillips, you're always here, and your time has passed. It's not a question of time having passed. Because sometimes we who have been there before, we have seen it before, and we are seeing it now. And we are seeing as to what changes. I don't expect any policeman now to fight crime the way myself, Cyril, and these guys fight. I cannot accept that.
Yeah.
And what I want the politicians to understand, and I'm saying it plain, and I've been saying it to some of them and everything, you now have to give the police what they require to do the job. You have bad policemen, remove the bad policemen. And there are ways and means here. So that the good guys, I'm not saying they're bad, but if the apple is bad, you remove. But you have to give, in this day and age, the police the support. What the police needs a lot now all over the world is the assistance of the forensic. Forensic comes in right there. Even some of the guys who have spent 30, 40 years as a result of science with the DNA, they are now released and discovered that the guy was never the guy who had committed. So the question now, you must go all out. Don't say we're too small, to give them the support that they require. Policemen, and I always say the commissioner, everybody, I think they're doing a good job, right? But what you have to do is to give them the tools so you can motivate them.
Yes.
You see, a lot of people now are under the impression that the police works 8 to 4. That might not be true. But this is what is being conveyed. Because sometimes, even in investigation, you call for the investigating officer, and they tell you, well, you know he's off today. And you're asking the public to assist. But one of the things you have to build is to build that trust, build that confidence, so that when that person calls you, then you can respond. And again, I think for the young policemen, I don't know how they do it, but if you're investigating a case, the people who are assisting you, or the people you are investigating, are not your enemies. So you have to be able to have that kind of rapport where they're open with you, honest with you, and you too with them. The other thing I want to see, I would tell them in the force, you, and I think Dr. King or yourself will say, when you have your scenes of crime man, you keep your scenes of crime man. He's trained, you spend a lot of money in him, and you keep it. You don't have him today, and because somebody has reported as some, you isolate him before they would call it to send you to Siberia, maybe Ancillary or Canaries. You don't take a trained man, right? Something is wrong, you try to bring him back and say, look, I've spent money, this is the direction. Too often, when you ask for the man who was investigating your case, you are told he's been transferred. I'm not saying it's happening all the time, but the word on the street is that it happens. So the question is, you get a team. These sellers are committed. These sellers know when they're going to move. As you said, your lab people and the police people move in. They have their bags and they move into it. And these are the kind of things you have, Michael. The other thing, as you mentioned here, is the protection of the scenes of the crime. St. Lucian's like Roro. Something has been committed. They come inside it, they flock all over the place. They find a lighter, they find a cigarette, they find something, they find a chain.
That's the evidence.
They pick it up. The police don't have time to get these things. And as Mr. Murray was saying, you need to protect that. And I'm hoping that it is being done. But as you said, somebody writing in the paper will tell you, well, look, it's not being done. So these are the little things that we have to do. And in addition to that, too, I don't believe in criticize. We, too, the public, have to help the police. We must, because they cannot do it on their own. And I say, too, if you realize something is happening and everything, I think it's good to call the commissioner. When we condone these things, tell the commissioner, you know something, I noticed such and such, so the thing can be corrected. That's the only way. But we, too, have to give them all the help that they need.
Because they're not everywhere.
No,
they can't be everywhere, you know. But on a parting note, like, as I said, what happened there? How much longer? I think the incident took place, say, 9 o'clock in the evening or something like that. how long can it stay on the scene if it is properly guarded before evidence gets washed away or eroded?
The thing is, you don't turn your back on the scene.
No.
You do as much work as you can at a particular time. Maybe you might be constrained by daylight,
Yes.
by have available light.
Yeah.
And then if you are not finished, I have had that situation in the past. If it's not finished, you post 1 or 2 guards, you have your boundaries, your perimeters. And there's a thing I tell officers, I say first light.
Yes.
So they ask me, what's first light? First light means that we back there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
So you recommence.
Yeah.
So I remember once I was doing a lecture with some of the officers at the academy, and a question asked me, said, how long should you spend at a homicide scene? And I say, you spend as much time as you need to spend.
Yeah.
And that's until you, with your training, are satisfied that you have got all the information.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't, the scene, as it is well recognized that the scene is the most important part of an investigation. A case can be made or broken by action or inaction taken at the scene.
Yeah.
And that is why one of the mandates of the forensic laboratory was to provide critical specialist support to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force Crime Scenes Department.
Okay.
But that fell apart because the lab lost its 2 crime scene specialists.
Okay.
So it means that the police are basic. I know for a fact that I have ordered on behalf of the government, the police, a lot of good crime scene equipment, some of the best we have at the laboratory. The thing is, how effectively is it being used?
Okay.
Because it's not only a question of having equipment, you have to know how to use the equipment.
That's right. Yeah.
Because if you don't know, it can even work against you. So they really have to look at the crime scene, hit that very hard, because that is the genesis of your case.
And the other thing too, Michael, you have to say, as you say, contamination of the scene.
That's
because the lawyers are good at that now.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
you must understand, when an incident happens, some of these top lawyers might send out their people saying and say, well, look, yes, you're telling me this, you're telling me that, but the crime scene had been contaminated.
That's how Knox got off in Italy.
I didn't even know he got off.
But let me add to that, where this contamination is so important, because nowadays you're talking about DNA.
Yeah.
And DNA is something that's very susceptible to contamination.
Right.
And as Mr. Phillips said a while ago, nowadays, or it's happening, maybe it's soon coming here, defense attorneys, they can get their own experts, hire their own forensic experts to challenge what the state is providing.
Yeah.
So that is why the state has to be up to mark.
Well, folks, I want to thank you so much, Louis, for coming here today. Cuthbert, I've called on you and your expertise, and I really want to thank both of you for being here today. I think our time is up, and this is Open Mic till next Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.